Okay, so recently I did the weirdest thing in a drawing that I never thought I would have done. And it actually turned out well. It ended up transforming a drawing from something that I really didn't like into a piece that I'm actually sort of okay with, which is really high praise coming from me because, like many artists, I am my own worst critic. So this piece took a long time to do all the detail with the ink, and it has some very intricate details here. But when I finally finished it, I just kind of looked at it and I was like, ugh. Especially the top part with the flower crown, it really felt like it was lacking something. But because I had already done ink lines over the whole thing, I didn't see any way that I could change it or improve it at that point. Normally when I'm not happy with the way something turns out, I just bury it somewhere in my room and tell myself that I'm gonna redo it at some time in the fictional future and then forget about it and move on to the next thing. But in this case, I left it out and it was kind of looking at me and I was looking at it for a couple days. And then one night I came home from work and I was sitting there looking at it and I was like, what if I just do green over top of the ink lines that I already did on the leaves? Now, I've been doing accents of color for the last 2 years, but I've never, ever done color over top of ink before. It didn't really cross my mind to try it, but if you had asked me about it, I probably would have said that, like, that's not something people do. Which is kind of ironic that I have all these rules for myself because a lot of the things I do are not things that people do. But I digress. So I just picked up a green colored pencil. I started coloring in over top of the ink and immediately I just had this euphoria of like, oh my God, this feels so amazing and so intense. So I kept doing it and I ended up using 2 shades of green to show a little bit of contrast, and actually it turned out pretty well. I think it gives the drawing more of a feeling of life overall. I've already talked about the meaning of this. This is Persephone, by the way. I've already talked about the meaning of this drawing in another video, so I'm not going to get into it here. But basically, Persephone represents the duality of life and death, and I feel like the death aspect is highlighted in these elements here, so the green gives it a little bit more of the life side. It's strange too because I broke another rule, which is that I normally never use more than 3 colors. In fact, in most of my drawings, I only use ink and then 1 color just for highlights and accents. But in some drawings, I will pair 3 colors together. And it's always 3 colors that I have chosen very particularly. But in this one, there's actually 4, technically 5 if you consider 2 shades of green. And it's a portrait, and I don't really do that many portraits, so it's a departure from my usual style in many ways. I don't know if I'll necessarily do it again, but in this case it did work. So thank you to Marijuana for sponsoring this idea. I'm very grateful. And that's all.